Hello, my name is Greg Gnarl, and I had the privilege of reading and reviewing the paper of Mr. Alan Flood. His paper was written to answer the question concerning the length of time that creation took. Mr. Flood's argument was that the 6 days of creation were 24-hour periods of time instead of another unknown length of time. Mr. Flood had several positive remarks with an excellent use of resources within his paper. There were many areas that are useful in teaching and learning, and it encouraged the audience to continue reading as you proceeded through the paper. Mr. Flood used Turabian very well in his footnotes and selected bibliography. As well, the purpose of the paper was clear and flowed well to present a biblical perspective of the 6 days of creation. I saw a couple of excellent points made concerning God governing the day and night and creating the sun and moon to govern the day and night on day 4. Mr. Flood kind of give us some information concerning this and how, in God's perspective, it was not a length of time and they're not contradicting one another, but they work together and how God was in control of the entire situation. This is found on page 5. Another was the introduction of the Hebrew word yom, which is with its corresponding definitions that are found on page 6. This resulted in a greater understanding of the word. Also, Mr. Flood brought out a great point of defining the word in context of the Scripture. This gives the audience a more direct result of the word meaning. In this word, we see how context is very important and vital. This is found on pages 8 through 10. Mr. Flood also made great use of other Bible verses to support his claim, especially when mentioning the Sabbath in relation to the 6 days of creation. First, he used the 10 Commandments from Exodus chapter 20, verses 8 through 11 on pages 11 through 12. Then he used Jesus when he referenced the Sabbath to compare to the same 6-day creation found on pages 14 through 15. After reviewing the paper, there were some areas that could be improved upon to make it easier to comprehend and flow better. In the oral defense video, Mr. Flood mentioned that grammar was not a strong suit of his. Brother, I feel your pain. When I took English grammar, the joke circulated in my area with people that know me concerning English, because my English is my second language, because Southern slang is my primary language. So I feel and I understand your pain. The paper had a few areas that seemed a little wordy, such as on page 1, complete existence. The things exist or not, so it didn't necessarily have to have the word complete existence. And also on page 3, the two words were put together, completely comprehensive. Comprehensive is complete. I just feel that this would be a better way to flowing of the paper and not have to use the extra words to give a definition of what you're trying to say. I also noticed throughout the paper some words were capitalized that were not in need of capitalization. Creation and creator on page 1. Creation throughout the paper was capitalized each time it would come about as you was reading it. Also on page 14, the word he, even though it was not the beginning of the sentence, it was capitalized. I understand your thinking, because there are proper pronouns used to represent God or his action. However, they should not be capitalized within a research paper. With only a few errors in the footnotes, the one I noticed was they appeared to me being placed at the bottom of the page instead of below the text, as is a requirement. And pages 5 and 9 really emphasized that position of the location of the footnotes. To me, the three things that stood out the most were, first, in spite of a great introduction and the topic being discussed thoroughly, the thesis statement in the paper was not clearly stated for the reader to understand the research. I saw the last two sentences of the introduction kind of pointed the reader in that direction of a thesis statement, but it was still inconclusive on actually being a thorough thesis statement that stood out and really emphasized what the paper was about. Second, throughout the paper, the resources are rarely introduced, and the quotations are seldom placed in quotations beginning with page 1. And throughout the paper, many of them were not introduced, and no quotations placed around the quoted information that's placed in the paper. Finally, on pages 7 and 10, there were 2 footnotes listed on the same quotation reference, and on page 12, there were 3 listed. Per Turabian Rule 16.3.5.1, on complex notes, there should only be 1 footnote with all resources listed within a single footnote. So this was an area that could be improved upon. The paper taught me several things and kept my interest throughout. The resources revealed a thorough effort was given to determine the length of time for God's creation. Any research paper should be examined and researched to establish an answer to the proposed question. And I feel Mr. Flood accomplished this task and did a tremendous job of that, with some of these areas that need to be worked upon to make the paper even better. You did a great job educating your audience to have a greater biblical understanding of the 6 days of creation. So Mr. Flood, thank you for your hard work in researching this topic. Thank you for helping us as your classmates all have a richer understanding of a 6-day creation. I pray we all become better writers, and most importantly, better equipped to know Christ more and to make Him known. So thank you very much.